Welcome, dear learners, to today's online counseling session. And as we know that we have in earlier online counseling session, we have completed two important blocks from this generic elective paper one, History of India, early time to 1750 AD. In the previous blocks, we have completed reconstructing ancient Indian history, and in that particular block we have completed sources of historical writing, Vedic age, Buddhism and Jainism. In the second block we have completed polity and administrative system of ancient India. And in today's counseling session we are going to cover another important chapter, that is the early medieval society, economy and culture. So we are fortunate enough to have Dr. Trilochan Pradhan sir with us. And without taking much time, I would like to request our honorable resource person for today's session. Please start the counseling session, sir.
Thank you, Rajesh sir. Now, dear learners, we'll discuss about the early medieval society, economy, and culture. In this block, in fact, we are going to discuss four chapters. The block is divided into four chapters: post Gupta trade and commerce, Delhi Sultanate, conquest and administration, then Bhakti and Sufi movement in India, then development of regional language and literature. The block is about the society, economy, and culture. Accordingly, we'll discuss about the economy and society of the post-Gupta period and the early medieval period. Then, here is a chapter, that is second chapter, about the Delhi Sultanate, and we'll only discuss the conquest. That is, the chapter is designed in such a way to understand how the after the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, how the ruler of the Sultanate got territories, extended their political influence, and in that particular territory, what type of administrative setup they had established. Then, Bhakti and Sufi movement. It is about one of the most important development of culture in the medieval period. It has an important impact to the history and culture of India. Then the fourth chapter, it is about development of regional language and literature. So let us start. It is the trade and commerce of the post-Gupta period. The post-Gupta period is in fact the early medieval period. The Gupta period came to an end around 6th century, and the legacy of the Gupta continued for a long period till the advent of the Muslim, till the establishment of the Islamic rule in India. So, in this chapter, we'll cover the economy of early medieval India concerning to trade and commerce. The period marked the slowdown of economy during that period. In the first aspect, it is essential to understand how there was slowdown of economy. Slowdown of economy was due to the slowdown of trade and commerce. In one sentence, it is a period of shrinking of economy. That means relatively trade and commerce declined during that period. There are so many factors, but here are important points to understand the period. For our clear understanding, the economy as well as the trade and commerce of the early medieval period or the post-Gupta period may be divided into two phases. First phase, that is 700 CE to 900 CE, that is the period of relative decline of trade in India. It was due to the slowdown of the growth of trade and commerce, shrinking of Indian economy during that period. Then the collapse of the urban economy. Collapse of the urban economy resulted due to the due to the decrease of the political and economic importance of the capital cities of the ruling dynasties of the post-Gupta period, or the capital cities who were prominent in the Gupta period lost their importance. Say for example, Taxila, Kosambi, and Pataliputra. Then the absence of coinage. It is the limited minting and circulation of metallic coin of that period. Then there was also lack of political initiative during the period of the Guptas, and suddenly after the period of the Guptas, ruler like Harshavardhana and other, they had created facilities for transport, safety and security of the traders. But in the early medieval period, when there was no strong political power in the center, it is a period India was divided into a number of small kingdom without a central sovereign power. So the period 700 to 900 is a period of the period marked the decline of trade. ସାଧାରଣତଃ ଏଇ ଆର୍ଲି ମେଡାଭେଲ ପିରିୟଡ଼ର ଏହି ସମୟରେ ଏକ ବରିଷ୍ଠ କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ନେତୃତ୍ୱ ବା ସରକାର ନଥିଲା। ଯେଉଁ କେତୋଟି ନଗର ବ୍ୟବସାୟ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଅଗ୍ରଗତି ଲାଭ କରିଥିଲେ, ଯେଉଁଠି ରାଜନୈତିକ ଶକ୍ତିମାନଙ୍କର ସହାୟତା ବି ରହିଥିଲା, ସେଇଟା କ୍ରମଶଃ ଦୁର୍ବଳ ହେବାକୁ ଲାଗିଲା। କ୍ୟାପିଟାଲ ସିଟି ମାନଙ୍କ ସେମାନେ ସେହି ସମୟର ଶାସିତ ରାଜନୈତିକ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠା ଲାଭ କରିଥିବା ସିଟି ମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରୁ ଉଦାହରଣ ସ୍ୱରୂପ ତକ୍ଷଶିଳା, କୌଶାମ୍ବୀ, ପାଟଳିପୁତ୍ରରୁ ଆଉ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟ ହେଲା ନାହିଁ। ଏବଂ ସେ ସମୟର ରାଜନୈତିକ ଶକ୍ତିମାନେ ମେଟାଲ କଏନ ର ତିଆରି, ଉତ୍ପାଦନ ଏବଂ ତାର ଅର୍ଥନୈତିକ ଅଧୋଗତି ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ତାର ସାର୍କୁଲେସନ କରିପାରିଲେ ନାହିଁ। ସିଧାସଳଖ ଟ୍ରେଡରେ ତାର ବାଧା ଉପୁଜିଲା। ତାପରେ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ଗଲେ ଗୁପ୍ତ ସମୟରେ ଯେଉଁ ରୁରାଲ ଇକୋନୋମିକୁ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାନ୍ସ ଦିଆଗଲା ଗୁପ୍ତ ମାନଙ୍କର ପରେ ପରେ, ଟ୍ରେଡ ଆଉ କମର୍ସର ଅଭିବୃଦ୍ଧି ପାଇଁ କଏନେଜ, ଶିଳ୍ପ, ରାଜନୈତିକ ବରିଷ୍ଠ ରାଜନୈତିକ ପ୍ରଭାବର ଯେଉଁ ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଥିଲା ତାହା ସେ ସମୟରେ ମିଳିଲା ନାହିଁ। ଆଉ ପରବର୍ତ୍ତୀ ସମୟରେ ଯେଉଁ ଇକୋନୋମି ସେଠି ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେଲା, ସେ ଇକୋନୋମି ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟକୁ ସୁହାଇଲା ନାହିଁ। ଫଳସ୍ୱରୂପ ଯେଉଁ ଫ୍ୟୁଡାଲ ଇକୋନୋମି ବା ରୁରାଲ ବେସ୍ଡ ଇକୋନୋମିଟି ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା, ସେଠି ଯାହା ଯାହା ଉତ୍ପାଦନ ହେଲା, ସେସବୁ ଉତ୍ପାଦନ କେବଳ ସେଇ ଅଞ୍ଚଳର ଆବଶ୍ୟକତାକୁ ପୂରଣ କରୁଥିଲା ଏବଂ ସହରକୁ ଯେଉଁ ଜିନିଷ ଯିବାର କଥା, ସହରକୁ ଯେଉଁ ଜିନିଷ ଅଧିକ ଉତ୍ପାଦନ ହେଇକରି ଯିବାର କଥା, ଯାଇପାରିଲା ନାହିଁ। ତାପରେ କମର୍ସିଆଲ ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରର ବି ସୁବିଧା ହେଇପାରିଲା ନାହିଁ, ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠା ହେଇପାରିଲା ନାହିଁ। ତାପରେ ସହରରେ ବି ସେମିତି କିଛି ସର୍ଭିସେସ୍ ଏବଂ ଏମ୍ପ୍ଲୟମେଣ୍ଟ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେଲା ନାହିଁ ଯିଏ ରୁରାଲ ଇକୋନୋମିରୁ ଜିନିଷ ଆଣିକିରି ସହରର ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ କମର୍ସକୁ ପ୍ରୋତ୍ସାହନ ଦେଇପାରିବ। ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଫେଜ୍ର ଅସୁବିଧା ଏବଂ ଦୁର୍ବଳତା। ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ସେଟା ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟର ଅଗ୍ରଗତିରେ ବାଧା ସୃଷ୍ଟି କଲା। କିନ୍ତୁ ପରବର୍ତ୍ତୀ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାୟରେ 900 to 1300 ଯେଉଁ ପିରିୟଡ଼, ସେହି ସମୟରେ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ କମର୍ସର ଅଭିବୃଦ୍ଧି ହେଇଛି। ତାର କାରଣ ହେଲା ଯେ ହଠାତ୍ କ୍ରାଫ୍ଟ ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଜ କଏନେଜ ଫାଇନାନ୍ସିଆଲ ଏକ୍ସଚେଞ୍ଜର ସିଷ୍ଟମ ଡେଭଲପ କଲା। ଗ୍ରୋଥ ଅଫ both internal and foreign trade was one of the most important parameter of that period. Then the large scale circulation of metal coin, then growth of monetary economy, fast phase ର ଅର୍ଥନୈତିକ ଅଧୋଗତିକୁ ଆମେ ଅଧୋଗତିର ପ୍ରମାଣ ଗୁଡ଼ାଏ ସୋର୍ସରୁ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳେ। ସେଥିରେ ଭିତରୁ ତା ଭିତରୁ ଆର୍କୋଲୋଜିକାଲ ଏଭିଡେନ୍ସେସ୍ ହେଉଛି ମୁଖ୍ୟ। ଆର୍କୋଲୋଜିକାଲ ଏଭିଡେନ୍ସେସ୍ କହୁଛି ଯେ ହାଉ ଦି ଅର୍ବାନ ସେଣ୍ଟର ଅଫ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ପିରିୟଡ ଲଷ୍ଟ ଦେୟାର ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାନ୍ସ। The cities like Ropar in Punjab, Ataranji Khera and Bhita in UP, Iran in MP, Prabhas Patan in Gujarat, Maheshwara and Pounar in Maharashtra, Kudaveli in Andhra Pradesh, এই ସବୁ ଜାଗାରେ ଯୋଉ ଆର୍କିଓଲୋଜିକାଲ ଏକ୍ସକାଭେସନ ହେଇଥିଲା ସେ ଆର୍କିଓଲୋଜିକାଲ ଏକ୍ସକାଭେସନ ପ୍ରମାଣ ଦଉଛି ଯେ ହାଉ ଦି ଅର୍ବାନ ସେଣ୍ଟର୍ସ ବିଗେନ୍ ଟୁ ଡିକ୍ଲାଇନ୍ or the archaeological evidences proved the slowdown of economy, and the slowdown of economy was mostly resulted due to the decreasing trend of trade and commerce. Apart from that, এই ସମୟର ଯୋଉ ସହର ଗୁଡାକ ସେହି ସହର ମାନେ ବି ତାଙ୍କର ଅର୍ଥନୈତିକ ସମୃଦ୍ଧିର ଯୋଉ ପରମ୍ପରା ଥିଲା ସେହି ପରମ୍ପରାରୁ ବି ସେମାନେ ବିଚ୍ୟୁତି ହେଲେ। ସେଠି ବି ଡିକ୍ରିଜିଂ ଟ୍ରେଣ୍ଡ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳେ। ପାଟଳିପୁତ୍ର, ବୈଶାଲୀ ଏବଂ କନୌଜ ଯୋଉ ସମୟରେ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟର ମୁଖ୍ୟ କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ଥିଲା ସେଇ କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ଭୁଷୁଡ଼ିବାକୁ ଲାଗିଲା। ଆର୍ଟ କ୍ରାଫ୍ଟ ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରି ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ଡେଭଲପ କଲା ନାହିଁ। ପାୱାରଫୁଲ ମୋନାର୍କି ଯୋଉ ସପୋର୍ଟ ଦେବା କଥା ସେଇ ସପୋର୍ଟ ଦେଇପାରିଲେ ନାହିଁ। ତଥାପି କେତେଟା ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆଇଟମ୍ ପୁରାପୁରି ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ କମର୍ସ ନଷ୍ଟ ହେଇଯାଇଥିଲା ବୋଲି କହିଲେ, ଦୁର୍ବଳ ହେଇଯାଇଥିଲା ବୋଲି କହିଲେ ଭୁଲ ହବ। କେତେଟା ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆଇଟମର ତଥାପି ପ୍ରଚଳନ ଥିଲା। ତା ଭିତରୁ ସେମି ପ୍ରେସିୟସ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ପ୍ରେସିୟସ୍ ଷ୍ଟୋନ୍ସ, ଆଇଭୋରି, ହର୍ସେସ୍ ଇତ୍ୟାଦି ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ। କେବଳ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ଯେ ଯାହା ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆକ୍ଟିଭିଟିଜ ବା ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ଆକ୍ଟିଭିଟିଜ ବା ମାର୍ଚେଣ୍ଟସ୍ ମାନଙ୍କର ଅର୍ଥନୈତିକ ଆଦାନ ପ୍ରଦାନ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟର କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମ ଥିଲା ସେଇଟା ଉଚ୍ଚ ଶ୍ରେଣୀର ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ଉଦ୍ଦିଷ୍ଟ ଥିଲା। ଯେମିତିକି ଏଇ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷର କଷ୍ଟମର ହାୟର କ୍ଲାସ ସୋସାଇଟିର ଲୋକମାନେ ଥିଲେ। ଦି ପିପୁଲ associated with the monastery, with the royal family, temples and all that, they were the main consumer of those goods. That means a general common item of import export, common item of trade and business was not developed, though but the trade was not completely dead during that period. Later on it revived in the second phase, that is from 900 to 1300 Christian era, common era. The second phase or that particular period marked by revival of trade and commerce. How can you understand that period? We can understand that period with the help of certain parameter. एमती केतेटा डेवलपमेंट हेइतिला सेई डेवलपमेंट को देखिकिरी आमे सेकेंड फेज रे ट्रेड एंड कमर्स रो ग्रोथ हेइतिला बोलिकिरी कहबा एवं ग्रोथ रा ग्रेजुअली स्टार्ट हेकिरी गोटे इंप्रूव स्टेज को जाइतिला। देयर वाज एग्जांपल in different literature and inscription about the growth of craft and industry. Then the example of excellent quality of cotton fabrics available from Bengal and Gujarat. It is recorded in different accounts, say for example in the accounts of Marco Polo and all that. Then the cotton fabric was improved, and the demands of the cotton fabric was there in the western market. It is known from in the market of the west, in the market of China, Arabs. It is known from different sources, and there were also other important grounds which helped the which helped for the improvement of the cotton textile. Say for example, mother, a type of a root of a particular plant was used for dye, that was very popular in Bengal. That type of dyeing with the help of natural substances was a very good development so far as the opportunity of trade was concerned. Then there was also cultivation of indigo plant in Gujarat. That indigo plant also helped in the coloring the textile item. We have references about those things in different sources. Apart from the textile, oil industry is also improved. Then, so in the early period, let us take the example of the early period. During the early period, what we are discussing here as the first phase where the trade was shrinking, when the trade and commerce was relatively declined, there was no during that period there was no support from agriculture. It was due to the rural economy. That rural economy was a closed economy. That economy was dependent to village and land, and that was changed later on. A number of commercial crops were began to produce. And this period, the second period, is a watermark so far as the production of the commercial crops were concerned. ଏହି ସମୟରେ ଯୋଉ ବ୍ୟବସାୟ ଭିତ୍ତିକ ଅର୍ଥକାରୀ ଫସଲ ଗୁଡାକର ଉତ୍ପାଦନ ହେଇଥିଲା, ସେଇ ଅର୍ଥକାରୀ ଫସଲ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟର ଯୋଉ ସ୍ଥିତାବସ୍ଥା ଥିଲା, ଦୁର୍ବଳତା ଥିଲା, ତାକୁ ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଭାବରେ ଦୂର କରିପାରିଥିଲା ସୁଗର କେନ୍, production of jaggery, sugar ଇତ୍ୟାଦି ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ଟ ହିସାବରେ ଟ୍ରେଡକୁ ସପୋର୍ଟ କରିଥିଲା, ଯାହାର ଡିମାଣ୍ଡ ଭାରତ ବାହାରେ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ମାର୍କେଟରେ ରହିଥିଲା। ତ ମାର୍ଚେଣ୍ଟସ୍ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ସେଇଟା ପ୍ରୋତ୍ସାହନ ଦେଲା, ସେମାନେ ସେ କମର୍ସିଆଲ କ୍ରପ୍ସ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ତାଙ୍କର ବ୍ୟବସାୟରେ ଉପଯୋଗ କଲେ ଏବଂ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ଅନ୍ୟ ଦେଶ ସହିତ ବୃଦ୍ଧି ପାଇଲା, ବୋଥ ଇନଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଆଣ୍ଡ ସି ରୁଟ୍ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍, that we will discuss in the later on. Apart from that, various metals were used for making of coins. That was also a watermark of that period. Then the people got idea about the metallurgy. That was not help in the minting and circulation of coin, the knowledge about metallurgy. It will also help in the development of craft. Metal related craft in copper, brass, iron, silver, etc. developed. This metal work became an item of trade for the people. Apart from that, other crafts like carpet, sword, horses, jewelry, salt, etc. also help in the growth of trade. Another important development was due to metallurgy, use of different type of metals, coin and other forms of exchange also developed. Not only coin, other forms of exchange developed. That is the growth of financial institutions like banks and others also developed. The traders took the help of those financial institutions and financial system that help in the growth of trade. Say, for example, system developed for cashless transaction like that of the papers, different type of commercial papers, bills, etc. It is known from a number of sources about a term hundika. That was a type of hundika. That was a type of bill of exchange. So the system with regard to financial transaction help in the growth of trade. Money circulation without paper, without money, but through a financial institution through system helping the growth of trade. So the the period marked different type of development in the form of exchange. Ali period रे କଏନ୍ର ଅଭାବରୁ କଏନେଜ୍ର ଅଭାବରୁ ମେଟାଲିକ୍ କଏନ୍ର ଅଭାବରୁ ଯେଉଁ ଅସୁବିଧା ହେଇଥିଲା ସେଇ ଅସୁବିଧା ଆଉ ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ଫେଜ୍ରେ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳିଲା ନାହିଁ ଫର୍ମ ଅଫ୍ ଏକ୍ସଚେଞ୍ଜର ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ହେବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଦେନ୍ ଦି ପିରିୟଡ଼ ମାର୍କ ଦି discovery of different trade routes. All type of trade routes, inland and sea route, ports in different parts of the country became vibrant so far as the trade contact was concerned. There were a number of routes leading from Kannauj and other parts of northern India to different parts of the country. Say, for example, routes from Kannauj connected to Assam, Nepal, Tibet, and through that route, trade passed to China. Then again, the routes from Kannauj and Mathura of northern India connected to the territories of west and northwest like Balkh, Peshawar, and Kabul. These route connected, this route connecting from Mathura to Balkh, Peshawar, and Kabul tossed the Silk Route to Broj and to Broj via Ujjain. Then roads from Bayana in the west connected to Rajasthan and Sindh. It also connected to the ports and towns of Gujarat and then Malabar. So the inland routes, land routes of India, well connected to the ports and towns of the coastal areas. ଯେଉଁ ନର୍ଦର୍ନ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହୋଇଥିବା ବାହାରିଥିବା ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ରୁଟ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ସିଧା ଯାଇକିରି କୋଷ୍ଟାଲ ଏରିଆରେ ଥିବା ବନ୍ଦର ଆଉ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ସେଣ୍ଟର ମାନଙ୍କୁ ପହଞ୍ଚୁଥିଲା ତାପରେ ସେଠୁ ନଭାଲ ୱେରି ସେଠୁ ମେରିଟାଇମ୍ ପ୍ରୋସ୍ପେକ୍ଟକୁ ସେଇ ରୁଟ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ପ୍ରୋତ୍ସାହନ ଦେଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ସି ରୁଟ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଯେଉଁ ପୋର୍ଟରୁ ଯେଉଁ ସି ରୁଟ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଥିଲା ସେଟା ଚାଇନାକୁ ଆରବକୁ ୱେଷ୍ଟର ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଅଞ୍ଚଳକୁ ସି ରୁଟ୍ରେ ଭାରତର ଜିନିଷପତ୍ର ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ବ୍ୟବସାୟର ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ଥିଲା ଫର୍ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ୍ the ports of western coast like Deval, Somanatha, Broj, Kambe and others. Then the ports of eastern coast like Nagapattinam, Masulipatinam, Visakhapatnam, Puri, Kalingapatnam, etc. carried the trade activities of India to the distant land of China, carried the goods to Arabian countries, and supplied also goods to the European market. Let us discuss about the items. The items of export were spices, textile, indigo, medicinal herbs, iron and steel product, leather mats, food grain, etc. These items exported to Arab and the West. Then the items of import. They were horses, dates, ivory, coral, emerald, etc. It were imported on the sea route from the west. And it is interesting to note that these import items were for re-export, imported by the Indian merchant to send those goods to the distant land beyond India. Then trade developed in India in the Persian Gulf with the Persian Gulf and South China. It is known from Tamil inscription. Then trade with China and Southeast Asia, also a development of that period. Then in the conclusion, one can say that the first page was the sinking of Indian economy due to the relative decline of trade. That is the important mark of the first phase of the early medieval period, just after, so to say, just after the Guptas. Then the second phase. Second phase was a period of economic improvement so far as the growth of trade was concerned, and the trade and commerce marked a level of growth and maturity during that period. So one can say that in the second period there was revival of trade and commerce. Now the second chapter of the block, it is about the Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate was founded in 1206, continued up to 1526. Here is a typological mistake. It is not 1561, it may be 1526. That is the fall of the Lodi dynasty, 1526, and the foundation of the Mughal rule in India. How Delhi Sultanate was founded. It is important to understand the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate so far as the conquest is concerned. What was that? The advent of the Arab in 712 AD as an invader marked the beginning of the military raids. Those military raids, that means before the foundation of the slave dynasty in 1206, the period 712 to 1206, that is a period of frequent military raids. The aim of that military raids was propagation of Islam, plundering of Indian wealth, and finally that particular motive transfer into capturing of territories. दिल्ली सुल्तानेटर कनक्वेस्ट को आलोचना करबा पूर्वरु तार जदि आमे बैकग्राउंड को देखिबा ताहेले 712 रु 1206 होची पीरियड जो पीरियड रे गुडाए सामरिक अभियान हेतिला एवं सामरिक अभियान रो उद्देश्य धर्म प्रचार एवं भारत रो धन संपत्ति लुंठन करी नेबार दीटा मुख्य अभिप्राय थिला एवं परवर्ती पर्याय रे सेटा परिवर्तन हे जाईची इट इज ड्यू टू देयर मिलिटरी सक्सेस they want to establish their land, their territories in India. That was a prescription so far as their religion was concerned. The religion of the people who invaded India, who had their military raids to India. That is, their intention was to establish Islamic rule in India. That is why they were interested for territories, and that objective was fulfilled with the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate in 1206. The ruler of Delhi and Ajmer, Prithviraj Chauhan, was completely defeated by Muhammad Ghori in the second battle of Tarain in 1192. ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ ତିରୋରୀ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ ପରେ ଯାହା ଭାରତୀୟ ଅଞ୍ଚଳ ସେମାନେ ଦଖଲ କରିଥିଲେ, ତୁର୍କିଶ ଇନଭେଟର ମାନେ ଯାହା ଦଖଲ କରିଥିଲେ, ତାର ସ୍ଥିତାବସ୍ଥା, ତାର ଫର୍ଦର କନକ୍ୱେଷ୍ଟ ଏବଂ କନସୋଲିଡେସନ ପାଇଁ ମହମ୍ମଦ ଘୋରୀ ତାଙ୍କର ଟ୍ରଷ୍ଟେଡ୍ ଜେନେରାଲ କୁତବୁଦ୍ଦିନ ଆଇବାକକୁ ଅର୍ପଣ କଲେ। କୁତବୁଦ୍ଦିନ ଆଇବାକ was initially a slave. Accordingly, he established this slave dynasty in 1206. Officially, Delhi Sultanate was founded. Their political activities started with the foundation of the slave dynasty. Tapare, it was the order of Muhammad Ghori to Qutbuddin Aibak for further extension of territories in India. So, by 1206, they established their political control over Delhi and Ajmer. Then they extended their territories in India. 1206 ଯେଉଁ ଦିଲ୍ଲୀ ଆଉ ଆଜମେର ସେମାନଙ୍କ ରାଜନୈତିକ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକଳାପ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହୋଇଥିଲା, ପରବର୍ତ୍ତୀ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାୟରେ ସେମାନେ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ ଏବଂ ରାଜ୍ୟଜୟ ନୀତି ଅବଲମ୍ବନ କରିକିରି ଟେରିଟୋରିଆଲ ଏକ୍ସପେନ୍ସନ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରେ ଆରମ୍ଭ କଲେ। They extended their territories to Kannauj, Banaras, Gujarat, Bengal and Bihar. It was the achievement of Qutbuddin Aibak. He not only established Islamic rule in Delhi and Ajmer, but successfully extended his territories. Then, conquest under Iltutmish. Iltutmish was the real founder of the Sultanate. He also followed the policy of war and conquest. He consolidated his authority over the Sultanate by defeating the rivals. One thing is very clear that ସେମାନେ ଭାରତରେ ତାଙ୍କର ଶାସନ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠା ପରେ ପରେ ଭାରତୀୟ ଶାସକ ଏବଂ ରାଜନୈତିକ ଶକ୍ତିମାନଙ୍କ ଦ୍ୱାରା ପ୍ରାୟ 200-300 ବର୍ଷ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜର ଶିକାର ହେଇଛନ୍ତି। ବିଭିନ୍ନ ସମୟରେ ଯେଉଁ ଇସଲାମିକ ପାୱାର ମାନେ ଆସିକିରି ଏଠି ଶାସନ କରିଥିଲେ, ତାଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ବି ସିଭିଲ ୱାର ହଉଥିଲା, ସେମାନଙ୍କର ବି ରାଇଭାଲ ଥିଲେ ଏବଂ ଯେଉଁ ଟେରିଟୋରି ସେମାନେ ଦଖଲ କରିଥିଲେ, ଇଟ୍ ୱାଜ ଇନ୍ ଦି ମୋଡ ଅଫ ଏ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ରେଡ୍ସ। ସେଟା ପ୍ରଥମେ ସାମରିକ ଅଭିଯାନ ଥିଲା। ସେଇଠି ନୂଆ କରି ରାଜନୈତିକ ସ୍ଥିତାବସ୍ଥା ବା ଶାସନଗତ ବନ୍ଦୋବସ୍ତ ସେମାନେ କରିପାରିନଥିଲେ ବହୁତ ଦିନ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ, 200-300 ବର୍ଷ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ। ତେଣୁକରି ଗୋଟିଏ ଅଞ୍ଚଳକୁ, ଗୋଟିଏ ରାଜ୍ୟକୁ ବାରମ୍ବାର ଆକ୍ରମଣ କରିବାକୁ ପଡୁଥିଲା ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ଏବଂ ସେଇ ଆକ୍ରମଣ ହିଁ ତାଙ୍କର ରାଜନୈତିକ ଉଦ୍ଦେଶ୍ୟ ଥିଲା। ତାଙ୍କର ଉଦ୍ଦେଶ୍ୟ ଥିଲା ଯେମିତିକି ସେମାନେ ଧନ ସମ୍ପତ୍ତି ଲୁଣ୍ଠନ କରିବେ ଏବଂ ତାଙ୍କର ଧର୍ମ ପ୍ରଚାରରେ ସହାୟକ ହେଇପାରିବ। ସେମାନେ ଯେମିତି both the territory and people, they want to subjugate both the people and the territory. People for realization of their propagation of their religion and territory for administration and wealth. तो frequent military raids थिला तांकर उद्देश्य। ସେଇଥିରେ ସବୁ ଯାକ ଆମେ କଙ୍କରର ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଦେଖିବା, ସେମାନେ ସେଇ ସବୁ ପନ୍ଥା ଅବଲମ୍ବନ କରିଥିଲେ। এই କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଇଲତୁତମିଶ ସଫଳତା ପାଇଥିଲେ, ତେଣୁକରି ତାଙ୍କୁ ରିଏଲ ଫାଉଣ୍ଡର ଅଫ ଦି ସୁଲତାନେଟ କୁହାଯାଏ। He successfully consolidated his position. Then he defeated his rivals. He put down all the rebellions. It is a period landmark in his career, that is 1235. He defeated all his rivals. He defeated so many Rajput rulers like ruler of Gwalior, ruler of Gwalior, Ranthambore, Malwa, Ujjain, etc. And he took a number of steps to consolidate his position, but later on we'll discuss that. Then another ruler was Balban. He was also famous for his conquest. By following the same policy of war and conquest, he strengthened his position in the Sultanate. He was first ruler to, to establish the principle of the divine origin theory of kingship. He claimed that he was the representative of Khuda, God on the earth, to govern this land. Balban ଏଠି କଂକ୍ରିଟ ରୟାଲିଜମ ଦରବାରୀ ଶାସନ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିଥିଲେ। ତାଙ୍କୁ ସହଯୋଗ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ସ୍ୱୟଂ ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଦରବାର, ମନ୍ତ୍ରୀ ପରିଷଦ ଇତ୍ୟାଦି ଥିଲେ, ଯେଉଁମାନେ କି ତାଙ୍କୁ ଖୁଦାଙ୍କର ଭଗବାନଙ୍କର ପ୍ରତିନିଧି ବୋଲିକିରି ଭାବୁଥିଲେ। ସେଇ ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲଟା ସେ ଆଡପ୍ଟ କରିଥିଲେ। Accordingly, one can just imagine how he followed the policy of war and conquest to subjugate the territory. He undertook new rules and regulation to make the administrative machinery more and more active for realization of his goal, that is the standing of the Sultanate. Sultanate को शक्तिशाली करबा पाई एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव मेशिनरी रे गुडाए परिवर्तन से आनीथिले। He successfully saved the Sultanate from the attack of the Mongols. तांकर समय रे मंगोल्स माने बहु बार दिल्ली सुल्तानेट को आक्रमण करथिले, but he successfully saved the Sultanate from the attack of the Mongols. And it is interesting to note that he established a defensive system in the northwest by appointing Subedar, by creating separate military corps, by repairing the old forts and constructing new forts. He created a defense wall to check the frequent Mongol invasion. Then he suppressed the revolts in Bengal. That was the first phase of the conquest under the Sultanate. It was under Qutbuddin Aibak, it was by Iltutmish, and finally by Balban. That means in a large part of northern India, in some portion of northwest and Bengal, they established their political control by following the policy of war and conquest. And in that conquest, they got success. In the second phase, the conquest of the Delhi Sultanate was carried by the Khalji rulers. Here, Alauddin Khilji or Alauddin Khalji was prominent. Alauddin was a great conqueror. He got success in all respect. It is said that, like Alexander, he had a program of world conquest. But it is also known that uh, he was not advised by his religious teachers and all that to do so, that he concentrated all his time and resources for consolidation of his power, his territory, so his power, his authority in India. That is why he started a series of military conquests for the extension of the territories of the Delhi Sultanate, for the consolidation of his power, and he took also a number of administrative, military, and economic reform for consolidation of his power. That we'll discuss later on. Then, say for example, his successful military campaigns. These are the example. In 1291, Alauddin invaded Malwa and captured Bhilsa. He conquered Devagiri, defeated Raja Ramachandra, and crossed the Vindhyachal. Crossing Vindhyachal, defeating Ramachandra, and conquering Devagiri was one of the most important achievement for him. Vindhya ନର୍ଥରୁ ସେମାନେ ବିନ୍ଧ୍ୟ ପର୍ବତ ଅତିକ୍ରମ କରିକିରି ଦକ୍ଷିଣକୁ ଦିଲ୍ଲୀ ସୁଲତାନେଟର ରାଜାମାନେ ଯିବାର ପ୍ରୟାସ କରିନଥିଲେ ଏବଂ ଏହି ଅଭିଯାନରେ ଆଲାଉଦ୍ଦିନ ଖିଲଜି ସକ୍ସେସ୍ ହେବା ପରେ ସେ ଦକ୍ଷିଣ ଆଡ଼କୁ ଉତ୍ତରରୁ ଦକ୍ଷିଣ ଆଡ଼କୁ ଦିଲ୍ଲୀ ସୁଲତାନେଟର ପରିସୀମା ପରିବ୍ୟାପ୍ତ କରିବା ଏକ୍ସଟେନସନ୍ କରିବା ଅବକାଶ କରିବାର advantage ସେ ପାଇଲେ। Then in 1296, 1296 was a watermark for his career. He defeated all his rivals. Up to 1296, he was not Sultan. In 1296, he became Sultan by defeating all his rivals. Being the Sultan of the Sultanate under Khalji dynasty, he shaped the kingdoms by successfully waging war against the Mongols. He combated Mongols' invasion, and finally, during his periods, the Mongols were defeated, and the Delhi Sultanate got a decisive victory against the Mughals. Again, he repaired the forts, constructed new forts, appointed new military corps there, appointed Subedar to check further invasion of the Mongols to Delhi Sultanate. Then another important development so far as the conquest of Alauddin was concerned, that is in 1297, he completely looted Gujarat. He defeated the ruler of Gujarat. The policy what he adopted earlier in Devagiri that he used in Gujarat. That means he looted property, killed the rulers, dishonored the kings and princes of the dynasty like that. Then in 1301, he conquered Ranthambore by defeating Rana Hamirdev. Then in 1303, he defeated Rana Ratan Singh and captured Chittor, the capital of Malwa. Sorry, the capital of Mewar. The defeat of the Rana of Mewar was a disheartening thing for the Rajput. Then it is said that one after another Rajput ruler got victim of Alauddin and their territory was incorporated in the Sultanate. Then in 1305, Alauddin conquered Malwa by defeating the ruler of Malwa, Mohalakdev. Then, in other campaigns, he defeated all the Rajput rulers again, occupied Ujjain, Mandu, Dhar, and Chanderi. So, from north to the west, he established his in complete authority by following the policy of war and conquest. Now, the territorial extent of the Sultanate. The territory of the Sultanate extended to whole of North India, a large portion of West, some territories in the south beyond Vindhyas. The territory of the Sultanate extended up to Warangal in Tamil Nadu. After Alauddin Khalji, another important imperialist who followed the policy of war and conquest was Muhammad bin Tughlaq. But the period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq was not remarkable so far as the conquest of the Sultanate was concerned. Muhammad bin Tughlaq suffered a number of reverses. In 1206, the Sultanate was established. Up to 1526, up to the end of the Sultanate, there were a number of military raids. The military raids brought the result of the loot of Indian wealth and extension of territories for the Sultanate. They defeated they defeated Indian rulers and annexed their territories into the territories of the Sultanate. Finally, Sultanate extended to a far-flung region. It is the result of the conquest of the sultans. The territory of the Sultanate extended to Lahore, Delhi, Badayun, Agra, Dolatabad, and the whole of north, including Bengal and portion of east. Then they had also established control over major portion of western India, a major portion of northwestern region, and parts of south. In conclusion, one can say that the period 1206 to 1206 to 1526, that was a period of successful military campaigns by the ruler of the Delhi Sultanate. It was full of military raids and program of territorial extension. Then the second aspect of the second chapter, it is about the administration of the Sultanate. In the beginning, let us consider the territories. The administration of the sultans of Delhi was not confined to the territory where they were ruling, but their administrative system, the administrative mechanism of statecraft, what they established, influenced other ruler of the then time, because the ruler of the sultanate were prominent political power of the then India. Now, nature of the state. Our idea about nature of the state will help us to understand the administration. The Delhi Sultanate under the Islamic ruler was nothing but an Islamic state. And generally, an Islamic state is ruled by Shariat or Shariat and Hadith. Accordingly, the administration and kingship of Delhi Sultanate was based on the principle of Shariat and Hadith, where Sultan is considered as representative of God. That is, the nothing Sultanate is nothing but the kingship. Sultan or king as the head of the state, and he is supposed to be the representative of God on the earth. It is as per the Islamic doctrines. But the situation is not similar in India. In India, the Sultan is not selected or chosen by the Millat or the Muslim, but here the ruler is a military general. He controls the territory by sword. Accordingly, the Sultanate was nothing but a military state. Then, according to the nature of state as per the Islamic parameter, Islamic political system, so to say, the work of the government here in India was to spread Islam. So, the work of the government here was followed a policy of discrimination between Hindus and the Muslim. And another thing is that the conversion of the people, forceful conversion to Islam. The policy they adopted in such a way that they want to convert the people into Islam by force. That means they use force for conversion. Then another way was either accepting Islam or killing. who will accept Islam, they had to pay a tax for being a subordinate type of citizen in India. In Islamic State, other than Muslims, is to live by paying some type of tax, that is jizya. That is the background of collecting jizya tax. And the citizenship is subordinate citizenship, not equal to the Mohammedans. That is the nature of this state. Then ଏଠି ନେଚର ଅଫ୍ ଦି ଷ୍ଟେଟକୁ ବୁଝିବାର ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଛି ଯେ ଭାରତରେ ଯୋଉ ଦିଲ୍ଲୀ ସୁଲତାନେଟର ଶାସନ ଥିଲା, ଇଟ୍ ୱାଜ ନଟ୍ ଚୁଜେନ୍ ବାଇ ଦି ପିପଲ। ସୁଲତାନ ମାନେ ଖୁଦାଙ୍କର ପ୍ରତିନିଧି ଥିଲେ, ବଟ୍ ଦେ ୱର ନଟ୍ ଚୁଜେନ୍ ବାଇ ଦି ଇସଲାମିକ ପିପଲ। They were military general, and by force, with the help of their sword, they established their power. Tenukuri, Sultan was nothing but a ruler of a military state. ଗୋଟେ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ର ସେମାନେ ରୁଲର ଥିଲେ। ତେଣୁକରି ତାଙ୍କର ପଲିସି ହେଉଥିଲା ପଲିସି ଅଫ୍ ଡିସ୍କ୍ରିମିନେସନ୍। ହିନ୍ଦୁ ଆଉ ମୁସଲମାନ ସବଜେକ୍ଟ ହିସାବରେ ସମାନ ନଥିଲେ। ଫୋର୍ସଫୁଲ୍ କନଭର୍ସନ୍ ସେଠି ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲ୍ ଅଫ୍ ଫୋର୍ସଫୁଲ୍ କନଭର୍ସନ୍ ଥିଲା। ଯିଏ ଧର୍ମ ଆଦରିକିରି ରହିବ କନଭର୍ସନ୍ ହେଇଯିବ, ଯେ ଭୟ ବା ମରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହିଁବ ନାହିଁ ସେ ଧର୍ମ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବ। ଯିଏ ଧର୍ମ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବ ନାହିଁ ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ଦେବ, ଜିଜିଆ ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ଦେବ ଏବଂ ସବଅର୍ଡିନେଟ୍ ସିଟିଜେନସିପ୍ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବ। ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ୱାଜ୍ ଦି ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲ୍ so far as the system was concerned. That is the basic nature of this state. Anyhow, Sultan was head like king. He is the head of the state, enjoying entire power, but he has to take the advice of the ulemas, and the most important duty of the Sultan was to strengthen the military power of the Islamic State, of the Sultanate. Then there were Amirs. Amirs were nothing but a certain type of council of minister. That group consisting of aristocrats or nobles, they were there to help and assist the king. Iltutmish established the first group of nobles, that was a group of Chihalgani, Chalisa, or a group of 40. That was later on abolished by Balban. It was in the beginning. Then, in all those places, new statecrafts created, established, and the designation power function of the central government was created. The ministry or the designation of the central government is known as Khalwat or Majlis. That means the associates and advisors of the government, it is a council, Majlis or Khalwat. Mainly, there were 4 important designations who actually run the government. सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट रे सुल्तान को सहयोग करुवा, शासन व्यवस्था को चलाउवा जो गोष्ठी से जहाँ को मजलिस बा खलवात कहा जाए, चारिटा इंपोर्टेंट डेजिग्नेशन थिला. देयर वर 4 मेन डेजिग्नेशन, एंड in the topmost position, so to say, was in the hands of Diwan-i-Wizarat or Diwane-Wizarat. In writing, it is Diwan-i-Wizarat, Wizarat, but it is Diwane-Wizarat. Diwane-Wizarat was the Office of the Wazir. He is the Prime Minister of the state. Next to Diwane Ujarat, the second important post was Diwan-i Aris, that is the military department. It is also known as Aris-e Mumalik. Then Diwane Insa, the record keeper of the Sultanate. The the PM or the Wazir is responsible for all important activities of the government like revenue, finances, military, judicial, and all that. But Diwane Insa was there to keep record of all those things and to run the court and administration, like that of a secretariat. Then Diwane Riyasat. Diwane Riyasat is the foreign department, also looking after peace, war, extension of territories, and all that. Then the Sultanate was divided into some provinces. The provinces were under Bali. It was headed by Nizam. Generally, the princess of the royal blood, very near and dear relative of Sultan, were appointed as the head of the provincial government. Then, other administrative unit was Khalisa. Khalisa consisting of crown land. That means the land directly administered and controlled by the crown, by the royal family. Then other lands were controlled by the army officials. They were known as iqtadars. The iqtadars were there. They were the representative of the sultan in other territories. In lieu of their service, they were enjoying land. They are doing actual administrative function and enjoying tax-free land from the given territory, given Ikta. Ikta was, and so to say, an estate, a zamindari, and the head of that Ikta was Iktadars. They were responsible official in the field of military and civil administration. They were enjoying tax-free land, that particular land, and giving some share to the Sultan. Then the Sore Jandar, Sir A Jandar, that is the bodyguard of the Sultan. Apart from army was under the control of the nobles and iqtadars like that. So for personal security, Sultan had organized and a band of bodyguard that is known as Sir A Jandar. Then the financial administration. The financial administration was most important organ of the government. It was generally supervised by the wazir. The sultanate ruler collected four type of taxes: kharaj, that is land tax, zakat, jizya, and khams. Zakat is tax collected for charitable activities, collected for other services, collected, and jizya from the non Muslim people, and khams, that is the property looted from the war. That is also an important contribution to the state revenue. ଯୁଦ୍ଧରୁ ଯୋଉଟା ସେମାନେ ଲୁଣ୍ଠନ କରିକି ଆଣୁଥିଲେ, ଯୋଉ ସୈନ୍ୟବାହିନୀ ଯୋଉ ଜେନେରାଲ ଲୁଟ୍ କରିକି ଆଣିବ, ସେ ତାର ମେଜର ସେୟାର ଷ୍ଟେଟକୁ ଦେବ. That was an important income of the state. That is known as kham. Then the judicial administration. Judicial administration. In judicial administration, no doubt the Sultan was head, but he was advised by the ulemas, And one among the ulemas, that is the Islamic scholar, is appointed as Sadr-e Jahan, and his office was Qazi-i-Mumalik, the chief judicial officer, and simply called Qazi, is a judicial post, judicial designation. There were also court in the villages. The judicial activities of the villages was coordinated by the panchayat, village panchayat, and the judicial administration of the cities was under the control of the kotwal. Here in the Sultanate, the punishment was very severe. There were crimes, and the there were crimes, and the decision of the officials appointed by the Sultan was final in that hearing. But the punishment was very severe so far as the judicial system was concerned. Then the third chapter, first part of the third chapter. Now we'll discuss all these things in nutshell. These are popular chapter. It is Bhakti Movement. The period Bhakti Movement is marked in the history of India as a period of medieval devotionalism. That means here, in a large time span, taking from 9th, 10th century to 15th, 16th century, there was domination of the saints and exponents who gave importance to the principle of devotion or bhakti. What is that? Bhakti is a path for attainment of salvation. There were a number of paths prescribed for attainment of salvation. Among those paths, the popular one is bhakti. Other than bhakti, there is also karma, there is also jnana, but कर्म मार्ग ज्ञान मार्ग एवं भक्ति मार्ग साधारण भाव में आम भारत इतिहास रे मोक्ष प्राप्ति पाई तीनटा मार्ग विषय रे अवगत था। यही तीनटा मार्ग मध्यरु भक्ति मार्ग होउची सर्वलोकप्रिय मार्ग एवं भक्ति मार्गर प्रवक्ता माने 9th-10th सेंचुरी रु 15th-16th सेंचुरी पर्यंत भारत रे तांकर प्रभाव विस्तार करिथिले। तेणु करी ई समयटाकू भक्ति मूवमेंट रो समय बोली कहा जाए। डिवोशन बा भक्ति को से माने आधार करिथिबारु सेटा मेन कांसेप्ट हिथिबारु मेन आइडिया हिथिबारु ताकू पीरियड ऑफ मेडाइवल डिवोशनलिज्म बोलिकी कहा जाए। मध्ययुगीय भक्ति मार्ग बा भक्ति आंदोलन समय बोलिकी ताकू साधारण भाव में कहा जाए। बट यही भक्ति मूवमेंट 12th सेंचुरी रे विशेष लोकप्रिय भाव में देखा देइतिला एवं जेते बेले हिंदू धर्म संस्कृति एवं परंपरा एस्कोटिक इस्लाम सहित संघर्ष करुतला। ठीक से समय रे जाति प्रथा को विश्वास करू नथिबा साधारण भाव में कॉम्प्लिकेटेड राइट्स एंड रिचुअल्स को विश्वास करू नथिबा वननेस ऑफ गॉड को विश्वास करुतबा बहु प्रकार पूजा पद्धति कर्म कांड को विश्वास कर न करिकरी गोटे सिंपल एंड प्योर पाथ को विश्वास करुतबा गोटे धर्म बा गोटे पंथ होउची एटा। तेणु करी एटा लोकप्रिय थिला। देन दिस path they advocated in the period was the path of love and devotion to God. That is also a way of worship. That the bhakti is a way of worship. It is a clear and pure relation. It prescribed about a clear and pure relation between God and the devotee. And it is considered as one of the simplest path for attainment of some salvation. What is the requirement here? The exponents of the movement advocated about complete surrender of the self to the will and wish of God. They prescribed love and devotion to God is only path for attainment of salvation. And the practice is nothing but the simple prayer, and they offer prayer in the form of bhajans. Bhajans, that is, enchanting the name of God to get the grace of God, will of the God. The period is a watermark so far as the Hindu Muslim unity is concerned. It is a liberal form of religion. The movement tried to minimize the gap between the two hostile community of that period, so to say. There is sharp difference between Hindu culture and Islamic culture, Hindu belief and Islamic way of belief. But here, the exponents of the Bhakti movement are trying their level best to minimize the gap between Hinduism and Islam. And they pleaded for Hindu Muslim unity. They propagated their idea in favor of the universal brotherhood and all that. So, in place of polytheism, they advocated about monotheism, oneness of God. God is one. We are worshipping and believing different gods and goddesses, but they are the names and forms of the supreme being, the same God. God is one, but the scripture and the exponents in earlier time presented us in a different way. Now, in their religion, they they gave importance to some noble things. Say, for example, simple code of conduct. Say, for example, giving importance to asceticism. They consider the life of they were the example so far as the life of a sannyasi, so far as the life of a sadhu is the most ideal and the most modest example. ଗୋଟେ ସାଧୁ ସନ୍ଥର ଜୀବନ ହଉଛି ସର୍ବଶ୍ରେଷ୍ଠ ଆଦର୍ଶ ଜୀବନ. That is the example of simplicity. ସରଳତାର ସର୍ବଶ୍ରେଷ୍ଠ ଉଦାହରଣ ସେଟା. ତାପରେ ସେମାନେ ଏସେଟିଜମକୁ ସବୁବେଳେ ପସନ୍ଦ କରୁଥିଲେ, ସନ୍ନ୍ୟାସଟାକୁ ସର୍ବଶ୍ରେଷ୍ଠ ବୋଲିକିରି ଭାବୁଥିଲେ. ୱାର୍ଲଡଲି ଥିଙ୍ଗସ୍, ୱାର୍ଲଡଲି ପ୍ରେଜର୍ସର ଦୂରରୁ ରହିବା ପାଇଁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରୁଥିଲେ. ପ୍ୟୁରିଟି ଅଫ୍ ହାର୍ଟ, ଗୁଡ୍ ଭାର୍ଚୁସ୍ ଥିଲା କୋଡ୍ ଅଫ୍ କଣ୍ଡକ୍ଟ. ସେଇ କୋଡ୍ ଅଫ୍ କଣ୍ଡକ୍ଟ ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ଯାଇକରି ଭଗବତ ପ୍ରାପ୍ତି ହେଇପାରିବ ବୋଲିକିରି କହୁଥିଲେ. ତେଣୁକରି ଏହି ଧର୍ମ ସାଧାରଣତଃ ଭାବରେ ସାଧୁ ସନ୍ଥ ମାନଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ ଆଇଡିଆଲ ଏପିରେନ୍ସ, ସେ ଆଇଡିଆଲ ଏପିରେନ୍ସଟାକୁ, ଆଇଡିଆଲ ପିକ୍ଚରଟାକୁ ପ୍ରତିପାଦନ କରେ. Now doctrines. Surrender to the will of God. Surrender to the will of God. One have to have utmost faith on God. Without faith of God, one cannot practice the love and devotion to God. The first step is have faith on God. So one has to surrender to the will of God. Then faith and love, faith and devotion to God. How to express it? To believe, to take the name of God. Then monotheism, oneness of God, worshipping and believing in one God. Enchanting the name of God in the form of bhajans and kirtan. Then they also advocated about equality of man. There is no discrimination in any matter with regard to their principles. Caste, gave no importance to priest, they gave no importance to idol, they gave no importance to mantras, sacrifices, rituals, and all that. And they gave importance to individual. And the individual had to believe, had to take the advice of a guru for attainment of salvation. Then, another important doctrine is the human service and feeling of dedication to realize God. Service to man is service to God. That concept was became an example in their propagation. Then, exponents of the movement. Exponents of the movement. There were a number of exponents. Among the exponent, Ramananda, Kabir, Nanak, Sri Chaitanya are most important. Let us take one point for each exponent. Ramananda was the first Bhakti saint who established a wide influence on the cultural and religious life of northern India. He advocated about perfect love for God and human brotherhood. When in northern India, when the northern India was the example of the hostile contact between Hinduism and Islam, at that time he advocated the perfect love for God is only one path for the attainment of salvation, only one suitable path for the attainment of moksha. That is the path for the realization of God. Then he advocated human brotherhood. So there must not be any inequality, discrimination in between man. Then Kabir. Kabir stood against ritualistic superstitions like Tirtha Jatra, idol worship, and all that. So Kabir, in his principles, bear the influence of both Islam and Hinduism. He advocated that simple code of conduct, love and devotion to one God is essential for the attainment of salvation, and there is no need of any external outer form, external behavior, outer form of religion was rejected by him. There is no right, there must not be any rites and rituals for the attainment of salvation. मोक्ष ପାଇଁ କୌଣସି ritualistic activities ର ଦରକାର ନାହିଁ. ଯାହା ଯାହା ritualistic activities ଅଛି, ତୀର୍ଥ ଯାତ୍ରା, holy dip in the river, idol worship, visiting different religious centers and all that, these are unnecessary outer form of religion. It was advocated by Kabir. Then Nanak. Nanak strictly advocated the principle of equality. Say, for example, his doctrine later on established a new religion, that is Sikhism. In Sikhism, there is a doctrine of community dining and community living, that is langar and all that. That is nothing but the example of the principle of equality. Then he felt the necessity of a guru. Without guru, it is not possible for it is not possible to realize God. For realization of God, for having faith of and belief on God, there must be advice of the guru. So he gave importance to the advice of guru or preceptor. A preceptor, an initiator is a must so far as the salvation or realization of God is concerned. Then another exponents of the movement, he was Sri Chaitanya. He gave more and more importance to bhajan and kirtans, and he advocated the Radha and Krishna cult. So his bhakti is known as Vaishnavism. he gave importance to Vaishnavism. Vishnu as the supreme creator of the universe, but no image worship, no temples he advocated. He advocated the name of Radha and Krishna, that is the avatar of Vishnu, and their worship, enchanting their name in the form of kirtan for the realization of God. Then Sufi movement. Sufi movement was a mystical Islamic movement. Here is the basic difference between Bhakti and Sufi. Bhakti saints were adhered to Hinduism. They accepted so many principles of Hinduism. The principle advocated in the Upanishad, Vedas, Vedanta was their guiding idea. But the Sufi movement was organized or advocated by the people who were Islamic by birth, but they were very liberal. They were very liberal. That means they were not completely accepting the principles as depicted in the Quran or the practice of the Sharia, Islamic law, but they were liberal, having some philosophical and liberal outlook. That is why it is a mystical Islamic movement. So, Sufism was not one religion, it is not one principle, it is the conglomeration, mixture of so many faiths and beliefs. Even if Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and all that, some important points of many greater religion incorporated in Sufism. And Sufism was not originated in India. It is originated in Persia and other Arabian land and all that. But it is migrated to India because it was a movement among the Muslim. Sufi organize different silsila. What is that silsila? Silsila is order. That means a particular guru propagating his religion as his religion among his disciples. That means the creed of a particular community, particular generation, and extension, spread of that particular concept, idea of that particular group further. That is, so to say, order, silsila. So we have different silsila, different Sufi order in India that we'll discuss in the second page. Then, in principle and doctrine, there is very much similarity in Bhakti and Sufi movement. The Sufi saints were also tolerant. They had also non-violence, the tolerance. They learned tolerance and non-violence from Hinduism. They adopted liberal views. They accepted so many principles of Hindu faith like asceticism, oneness of God, etc. Then liberal outlook, equality, synthesis, these are the character of Hindu religion. It highly influenced the Sufi saint. Then the Sufi saint believed in self-mortification. They were very strict in observance of their practice. They were far away from worldly things, and they prefer giving pain to body for the attainment of salvation. They prefer giving pain to body. Physical torture is a general thing for them because they consider body is creating problem in the path of the attainment of salvation. Realizing the God worldly things and the demands of the body is a boundary. It is a hurdles for the individual. So they advocate of self mortification and complete torture of the body, and advise their follower to remain far away from the worldly things. Then the principle and practices of Sufism. There are few examples. We are running short of time. We are not able to give many examples. Then Zakir. It is a practice of repeated recitation of devotional songs. Devotional songs was initially the singing of some portion of Quran. Later on, the Sufi saint wrote their own devotional songs, and they repeatedly recited all that in a congregation of their fellow men, in groups, in community. They recited the devotional songs. That is known as Zakir. Then Sama is a musical gathering like that of Zakir. It is not frequent. It is not frequent, but an event of for their propagation. It is the Sama is musical gathering for singing and dancing. Singing and dancing is symbolizing their way of surrender to the will of God. Surrendering oneself to the will of God is the practice of singing and dancing. Then phana, inhalation of the self. No, no physique, no individual matters, but surrendering everything in the name of God. That is like that of complete faith and belief, having devotion to God, like that of Bhakti doctrines. Then Khanka. Khanka is hospices, that is, the living place of disciples and attenders lived with the Sufi saint. ଖାନକା ହେଉଛି ଗୋଟେ ରେସିଡେନ୍ସିଆଲ ପ୍ଲେସ୍ ଯେଉଁଠି ଡିସାଇପୁଲ ମାନେ ଏବଂ ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ ସେବାୟତ ମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର ସୁଫିସିଏଣ୍ଟ ମାନଙ୍କର ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ରହିବେ, ସେଠି ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ କରିବେ, ସେଠି ସେ ତାଙ୍କର ଡକ୍ଟ୍ରିନ୍ସର ଆଦାନ ପ୍ରଦାନ ହେବ ଏବଂ ତାର ପ୍ରଚାର ପ୍ରସାର ପାଇଁ ଯେଉଁ ପ୍ରସ୍ତୁତି ହେବ ଯେଉଁ ଜାଗାରେ ତାକୁ ଖାନକା କହନ୍ତି। ସାଧାରଣ ଭାବରେ ସୁଫିଜମ ଦୁଇଟା ଜିନିଷ, ହିନ୍ଦୁ ଧର୍ମର ଦୁଇଟା ଜିନିଷକୁ ବିଶେଷ ଭାବରେ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିଥିଲା ଆଦର୍ଶନିକ ଭଳିଆ। ସେଟା ହେଉଛି ସନ୍ନ୍ୟାସ ବ୍ରତ ଏବଂ that is about the practice of meditation। ତେଣୁକରି ସେ ଖାନକା ହଉଥିଲା ସେଇ ପ୍ଲେସ୍ to practice all those things। ସେଇଟା ଅଭ୍ୟାସ କରିବା ପାଇଁ, ତାର ପ୍ରଚାର ପ୍ରସାର କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଖାନକା ହଉଥିଲା ଉପଯୁକ୍ତ ଜାଗା। ଏବଂ ଖାନକା ହେଉଛି ବି ଗୋଟେ ହିନ୍ଦୁ ପରମ୍ପରାର ପ୍ରଭାବ, like that of ମଠ, like that of monasteries of the Buddhist। ହିନ୍ଦୁ ମଠ ଏବଂ ମୋନାଷ୍ଟ୍ରିର ଆଧାରରେ ସେମାନେ ଖାନକା ମାନେ ସବୁ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଅଞ୍ଚଳରେ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିଥିଲେ, ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜ କରିଥିଲେ, ଯୋଉଠି ଧର୍ମ ପ୍ରସାର, ସୁଫି ଧର୍ମର ପ୍ରସାର, ତାର ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ ର ଉପଯୁକ୍ତ ସ୍ଥାନ ଥିଲା। Then the aim of the movement, self development। What is that self development? The way to get realization of God। The individual is here important। The individual has to practice some principles, moral principles, uh, um, attending the sama, having the concept of phana, living. That is, it is a self development. No other one can do it for someone. The individual himself has to practice this. And the self development is essential for self realization of God. That is the principle. Then the service to humanity. Service to humanity is a liberal principle. That is where they also advocated about the Hindu Muslim unity and all that. Then the Sufi doctrine, Sufi order or Sufi silsilas of Sufism. There were so many silsilas. Abul Fazl and Amir Khusro, they referred about existence of so many Sufi silsilas, Sufi order. There were 12 or 14 Sufi order. Among these, the four are important. That is Chisti order. It is very popular in India. The most prominent saint of Sufi, sorry, there were four order. The first one is Chisti order. The most prominent saint of the Chisti order was Khwaja Muhyiddin Chisti. The main center of the Chisti silsila was at Ajmer, Narnat, Nagaur, Badayun, Ajodhya, and many places of UP. Then second important silsila was Surhardi silsila or Surwardi order. The main center of the Surwardi in India was Sindh and Multan. Sheikh Sahabuddin was the most prominent Sufi saint, belonged to Sohardi family, Surhardi families. Then Qadri Silsila. Qadri Silsila was famous in Punjab, Agra, and Delhi. Then the fourth one was Naqshbandi. Naqshbandis were popular during the period of Akbar. It is also a popular silsila in India. Now, within very short time, we'll discuss another chapter, that is language and literature. Like that of the Sufi and Bhakti movement, the growth of language and literature is also another important development of the early medieval period. The period marked the Islamic contact with India. The period marked the impact of Islamic culture on Indian culture. It is also the influence of Islam we find in India. That means a new type of lifestyles develop in India, that one can say Indo-Islamic culture of Indo-Islamic lifestyle. Accordingly, some Indo-Islamic influence or medieval development took place in the field of language and literature. It is marked in the rise and growth of regional literature. Regional literature in India developed due to so many factors. For example, what we have discussed in the background, the outer contact, external contact, contact of other culture, contact of other language, contact of other religion. Then, out of the local demand, say for example, what is that local demand? The ruler were Islamic, their court language was Persian, but the people were not aware about the Persian language and literature, that the court language. Then it is out of the local demands, new regional languages developed, and regional languages were there. That was the speaking language of the common people. Then language of the speaking language and language of the common people came to the forefront in the early medieval period, and a number of literature created in that language. That is the evolution of vernacular uh, language and literature. That vernacular language and literature got the influence of other development like that. The scholars developed a familiar Sanskrit. That means it was possible due to the popularity of Sanskrit after that classical period. Vedic Sanskrit and classical Sanskrit, later on Sanskrit became popular among the learned people. So, the evolution of classical Sanskrit from Vedic Sanskrit and popularization of Sanskrit among the scholars and all that as a mark of the contact with the outer world, became the result of the rise and growth of regional languages. Anyhow, the period marked the emergence of four types of Prakrit. Four type of Prakrit. What is that Prakrit? That is a middle language, intermediary language created out of the speaking language of the common people in vernacular platform, having the influence of classical Sanskrit and all that. That is, four are prominent. Sura, Suraseni in Mathura region, first one. Magadhi in Magadha region. Poichai in northwestern parts of India. And Maharashtra in Maharashtra region. So, Prakrit being a vernacular, it was very popular in the early medieval period. A number of Buddhist writings were created in that in that language, and there was also literature like that. Then the growth of regional languages originated from Sanskrit or the Indo-Aryan group of language. It was not the vernacular but refined classical language having the influence of Sanskrit developed in different regions, different pockets of India during the early medieval period. That is Bengali, Marathi, Gujarati, Odia, Assamese, and all that. These are the development of the north. There was also development of the south. That is with the influence of the Dravidian language. The Dravidian language was the not created in the early medieval period. Their origin was originated earlier in the say to say before Common Era or Christian era. But Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam developed as a literature, as a perfect literature, common literature in South India during that period, like that of the Bengali, Marathi, Gujarati, Odia, Assamese in the north and eastern India. Then, apart from these two group of language, there were also Apabhransa literature. Apabhransa is getting the Buddhist influence, more vernacular and more vernacular and Prakrit and less other regional languages. So the period marked the growth of regional languages in the eastern India, northern India, in South India, in the Apabhransa literature. That was the most important uh, literature for the Buddhist writing. Then several languages evolved during that period as a regional spirit. That means before that the vernacular literature was not so prominent. The condition of that period gave certain prospect, then vernacular literature developed. It was due to the patronage of different ruling dynasties in different parts of the country. Say, for example, in Odia, different branches of Odia, Panchasakha literature, and all that developed. Then, uh, then Ramayana, Mahabharata, Sala Mahabharata, and others were written in Odia. So it is a period of evolution of regional language and literature as well as speaking and vernacular literature. It was not in Odisha, it is in the north, it is in south. So the period is a watermark so far as the the large scale production of literature belong to different branches of learning. One, one thing must be clear here that these languages were not for the religious use. These languages were Silpa Shastras, medicinal texts, Dharma Shastra, treaties, secular literature, book on polity, economics, different type of different branches of knowledge were written in different literature. That is one of the most important development of this period. So this is the end of the class. I have tried my little level best to to analyze some points with regard to our book 3. In book 3, in fact, we have four chapters. All the four I have tried my level best to discuss here, and you can take the help of these PPT to make notes out of this. Sometimes I have discussed all these things from your SLM, and sometimes I have used my uh, style of teaching and my own material to make you understand and to have a precise discussion on the topic, on the entire period. So the topic is not limited; it is a big block, and I have tried. Let us see your response. Now, in the last, I request all the learners to contact me if you need any guidance from me. I have given my email ID here. Now, over to Rajesh sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, and thank you for giving very deep insight to the topic. Actually, the session was very informative indeed, and I hope I am very sure that the learners will be very helpful after this session. And I request all the learners to go through this video. This will be available in our StreamYard, YouTube also. Uh, Thank you very much, sir, for giving your precious time to us, sharing your knowledge with us. And with this session, we have concluded the block 3, that is early medieval society, economy, and culture. And in this particular session, we have discussed about the post-Gupta trade and commerce, Delhi Sultanate, conquest and administration, and Bhakti movement, Sufi movement in India, and development of regional language and literature. So thank you very much, dear learners, for being with us. Thank you very much, Dr. Tilochan Pradhan sir, for guiding us, guiding our learners, and very clearly and giving very transparent knowledge about each and every topic. Actually, you are very right that each and every topic of this block was very important, and I hope our learners will make it through during their examination also. Thank you very much, sir. Now, with your permission, we can shall we conclude this session, sir?
Thank you, Rajesh sir. Thanks for a patient hearing to me. I thanks
Thank
all the learners. I wish them
thank
thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you very much, dear learners. Officially, I'm concluding this session here. Thank you very much.